So the Drunken Granny stitch in the triangle shape is so cool to make. And I think you're going to be really excited about trying this one out. Hi everyone, it's Karen here from the Stitch Sessions. Welcome. Today I had the chance to squeeze in this extra tutorial for you based on someone's question from last week's tutorial. So in the tutorial we did last week, I introduced you to this really fun stitch called the Drunken Granny stitch. And it consists of 4 double crochets with a chain 1 in between the last double crochet of that cluster there. And what that does is it creates the need for the shells to start to tilt against each other with each row, and that's why they call it the Drunken Granny shell. Now, I had a great question in the comments of that video. Megan had a fantastic question, and she was curious as to how we would use this stitch in a shape like a triangle, for example, if you're doing a shawl, because she was concerned about how do we work increases using this stitch. So I said, that is a fantastic question. I got so excited about it that I started working out and counting the math and figuring out how to do it. And this is what I'm going to show you today. So this is what it looks like using a medium 4-weight yarn, using Lion Brand's 24/7 mercerized cotton. Isn't that cool? And it is the same on the front as it is on the back because you are going to be turning your work, and it looks just absolutely beautiful. So this would be fantastic in a shawl for sure. Now, the trick to creating this triangle is to make sure you place increases in the right spot. So you can see I've got the point at the top and the point on each side. So we begin like a traditional granny square. But then once we create the point, we create the increase slightly different. So you can see in the spine of the triangle here, it's not a direct line up. So you can see that there is a space here, here, here. So it's kind of jumping back and forth. So your spine kind of has this little jagged-like effect. So you can see the posts are kind of squiggling a little bit. So whereas with a traditional granny rectangle, you would see that space running straight up the center. But what it does is it stays in line with the lacy-like effect, and you don't have to compromise your Drunken Granny stitch. So let's just get to it today. I'm going to take you through how to get started and how to build it up for the size that you desire. So I just did, I think, about 6 or 7 rows here. But you would continue following the same method and you can create a very long, beautiful shawl. Okay, so for this little swatch here, I used Lion Brand's 24/7 cotton yarn. It's a mercerized cotton, and I don't have the label with me. I can't remember if they consider this a medium weight 4 or a lightweight number 3. I definitely always consider this a lightweight number 3 just because of how thin it is, but I'm almost certain that the label says medium 4. But it creates a nice kind of, not dense texture, but it's got some nice stability to it. So if you wanted to use this stitch to do something more like a piece of art or some home decor, this would be great yarn for you. I just wanted to use it so you could kind of see the way the shape comes out. But for this tutorial, I'm going to be using this bamboo yarn, I believe. It's some leftover yarn I have. This is definitely a lightweight number 3, and you can see how thin it is. And I want to do this tutorial showing you with this yarn so that you can see, if you specifically want to make this for a shawl, how lovely the drape is going to be. So that's what I'm using here. And then the hook size I'm going to be using is a 4.5 millimeter hook, which is also known as a G or a size 7. And it's probably a little bit larger than what this yarn would be recommended for, but Those of you that know me know I always like to go up slightly a hook size, especially for things like shawls or scarves that I want to have a beautiful drape. So that's why I am going up just slightly. I think they generally recommend a 4, even a 3.75. I think they normally recommend for this yarn, just in case you're wondering. And of course, anytime you're working on a project, make sure that you have a pair of scissors on hand and a yarn needle to weave in your ends at the end. So let's get started. Okay, so we're going to begin by placing a slip knot on our hook. And then we're going to chain up 5. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we're going to find that very first chain, and we're going to insert our hook, and we are going to slip stitch to join. And that's going to create that nice little ring right there that we're going to work into for row number 1. So what we're going to do next is we are going to chain 4. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is going to count as a double crochet and a chain 1. Then we're going to go into the ring here, and we are going to place a Drunken Granny shell, which looks like this. You will yarn over, and into the ring you are going to place 3 double crochets. So we have 1, and then we have 2. I'm going to try and work over that tail. So this is the second double crochet, and then there is the third double crochet. Okay, I will then chain 1 and double crochet again into the ring here. Okay, so I've started with chain 4, which counts as a double crochet, chain 1. Then I have my Drunken Granny shell, which is 3 double crochets, chain 1, double crochet. These should always be done as one unit, so to speak. Now I'm going to create the point of my triangle. I'm going to chain 2, 1 and 2, and then I'm going to go back into the same ring, and I'm going to place another Drunken Granny shell. So that means we're going to go in with 3 double crochets. There's 1. There is 2. And then 1 more. There is 3. And then I'm going to chain 1 and place 1 more double crochet. Okay. So that's row 1 complete. So what do we have here? So this probably looks a little bit offset to you at the moment. Technically, we have a double crochet, chain 1, which will always be on each side of your triangle at the bottom. Then we have a Drunken Granny shell, which is 3 double crochets, chain 1, double crochet. Our corner is always created by chaining 2. And then we had another Drunken Granny shell, which is 3 double crochets, chain 1, double crochet. So right now it doesn't really look any different other than the fact that we've got this extra little space here. Whereas in a traditional granny triangle, you would never do that there, okay? So you're gonna start noticing a bigger difference probably once we get into round 3. And even round 2, you're gonna notice it a little bit. So let's go on to round 2. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so for row 2 and every row, you will always begin with a chain 4. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. You'll turn your work, and as always, this counts as a double crochet and a chain 1. Immediately into that first space, you will place a Drunken Granny shell. So as we've done before, you're going to place 3 double crochets. So there's the third one. And people are always nervous about, like, where do I place the increases and all of that fun stuff, and you're going to see how easy this is. So this will always be how you begin. So you've got your 4 chains, which is going to create that chain 1 space. You've got 3 double crochets, chain 1, and a double crochet back into that same space, because remember, we're always using the Drunken Granny shell. There we go. Okay, so right now it's probably still a little tricky to see. So that's the first chain 1 space that you always begin with. That's on its own, and then you've got your Drunken Granny shell that has the space on the side. Now you skip these and you go to the next space. So this space here belongs to this first Drunken Granny shell. So all you're going to do is you're going to repeat the Drunken Granny shell. Man, that's a mouthful. So we've got 3 double crochets. So this is the second one. And then you've got the third one. Chain 1 and double crochet back into that same space. Okay, and as you can see, we're coming up to our corner. So there isn't just one corner space per se. So technically right now I've worked into that chain 2 that created that peak. We are now going to chain 2. So you can see it's going to sit offset, and that's okay. So that's going to create our next peak. So the chain 2 spaces always create the top peak of your triangle. Now all you're going to do is find the next space to the granny inside the Drunken Granny shell, which is the chain 1 space. I hope that doesn't confuse you guys. The chain 2 is only ever at the top corner. All the other chain 1 spaces belong to the Drunken Granny stitch. And so all you're going to do now is go in there and work a regular Drunken Granny shell. Okay, so it's not like you really have to worry too much about where to place the increases. It's almost like that chain 2 at the peak takes care of itself. So then we chain 1 and back into that same space, we double crochet. So technically each cluster of stitches that we're working for that Drunken Granny shell has 4 double crochets in it. And then of course there's a chain 1 there. Okay, so you can see how the peak forms itself. See, there's the center, so it went up and now it's off to the left again. And then the last thing you're going to do is you've come down to the end, there's a chain 1 space. You simply place a Drunken Granny shell in there. So you have your 3 double crochets. Your chain 1 and double crochet, which coincidentally in a regular granny triangle, you always want to have the chain 1 and a double crochet at the end. And this is what helps to keep your work or the bottom edge of your triangle fairly straight. Okay, so let's take you on to row number 3. So once you start getting into 3, 4, row 5, 6, 7, you're really going to see how it's super easy. You never even really have to think about increases. They just take care of themselves. So let's go on to row number 3. Okay, so for row number 3, we start again by chaining 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're going to turn your work, and right away into that very first chain 1 space, you place a Drunken Granny shell. So you're going to get really, really good at this stitch because you're going to be repeating it, whoops, a lot. So that's a second double crochet, third, chain 1, and then 1 more back into that same stitch. Okay, just like that. Okay, great. Now we've got some more spaces to work into. So what we do now is we are going to go into the next granny shell chain 1 space. Now, you're probably looking at this going, hey, there's only 3 double crochets here. Remember that we are turning our work. So this is the back side. So when we do a Drunken Granny shell, that chain 1 space sits to the left. Yeah. So when we turn our work, that chain space is now on the right. So we are going to skip this entirely and go to this chain space, which belongs to this Drunken Granny shell. And into that chain space is where you place the next Drunken Granny shell. So 3 double crochets, chain 1, and 1 more double crochet. Okay, just like that. And then you can see, okay, I'm coming up to the peak here, but I've got 2 spaces here. So when you've got 2 spaces close together, you know you're basically in the area of the peak. Now, this space is a little larger than this space. That's our chain 2 space. So what we're going to do is into this chain 2 space, we are going to place a regular Drunken Granny shell. So nothing is really changing except what you're going to do when you complete this shell. So you have your chain 1 and double crochet. And anytime you work your Drunken Granny shell into the chain 2 space, you want to come out of it with a chain 2, okay? So that's the only thing you ever have to pay attention to. And then, so you go, oh, okay, here's the next chain space. You go right into that and do your Drunken Granny shell. And you might wonder, oh my goodness, that might be too many stitches. It actually is not. It works out perfectly. Trust me, I have worked on this shape for quite a bit. I did a lot of math for you guys, so you don't have to. So the chain 1 and double crochet, okay? Right there. So see how it looks like it's bunching a little bit. So that chain 2 is now the peak of your corner there. So see, the peak before was here and now it's going here. So basically it just jumps back and forth so that the spine of your triangle looks a little bit like it's squiggling up. Isn't that cool? And you just keep doing the same stitch over and over, and it does not disturb the shape, and it keeps your triangle looking fantastic. So now I go to the next chain 1 space. So remember, we're not going into the space here between the clusters of stitches. We're going into the actual space of the stitch. So I'm going to go in right there, Drunken Granny, and then we're going to chain 1 and then 1 double crochet. Oh, it's got my join there. Okay, and then the next space, whoop, look at that, I'm down at the end. So all I'm going to do, my Drunken Granny stitch. So this is what is so neat about this, is you just keep repeating the same stitch. And the only difference is at the top of that peak, you're going to chain 2 and everything else falls into place for you. Okay, so this is the end of row number 3. And if I put my work down, just kind of stretch it out a little bit, and you can see it's maintaining its shape just so lovely. So like I said, you can see the spine jumping back and forth, and then you can see how your shells are tilting a bit. Again, in these first 3 rows, it's subtle, and then as you work further rows, it really takes shape. And at the end, you always have that double crochet chain 1, double crochet chain 1, okay? So if I show you again in this project where I did 6 rows, see how you can see that jump goes back and forth, and then you can really start seeing how the shells tilt. So pretty, isn't it? So you know what I'm gonna do? I am going to work up also 3 more rows of this yarn so you can kind of see. So, you know, this is decent, but again, this is a mercerized cotton, so it's got a little bit of structure to it. And this one is bamboo. So I'm going to work up 3 more rows so you can see kind of what the drape will be like. But this is pretty much the repeat, and you are good to go. Okay, Okay, so I have completed 6 rows. Now you can see how beautiful that texture is because of the fact that we've turned our work. You can see the backs of the shells really just kind of give it that really extra beautiful texture. And now you can really see how the spine is worked up down the center. Now I want to show you something. When we bring back our mercerized cotton yarn, which is considered a medium 4, that's 6 rows, and then I have 6 rows of this one, which is a lightweight number 3. So you can definitely see the difference in the sizing, same number of rows. Also, this bamboo yarn, look at how beautifully it's soft and cushy, and it drapes really, really nicely. So if you were gonna make this into a shawl, like create a nice large triangle, this would be absolutely gorgeous. So Megan, I hope this answered your question with regards to using this stitch in a triangle shape. And I would love it if you do create this in a shawl, if you would tag me and share with us how your shawl came out using the Drunken Granny stitch. So for those of you that don't know, you can find me on Instagram at The Stitch Sessions, as well as Facebook at The Stitch Sessions. I do have a Facebook page. Now, if you have any detailed questions, this is pretty straightforward. It follows just like the regular stitch we did last week, but in case there's any little nuances that you were maybe unsure of in the corner here or anything like that, please do feel free, leave a comment down below. And for those of you that if you see someone commenting with a question and maybe you can help them out, please do feel free to answer it. We're all here to help each other out. So make sure to do that. And I know some of you do like to email me directly, so feel free to do that. You can email me at info@crochetcrafty.com. And as always, I invite you guys to check out the website, crochetcrafty.com. Lots of fabulous goodies there for you. There's sizing charts. There's free patterns there for you, as well as a link to my Etsy shop with more fantastic patterns available to you. And I do have a newsletter, everyone. It's been a little bit put on pause for the last few months. It's just been really, really busy. But you can check out previous issues. And I am going to get back into reissuing the newsletter. It's most likely going to be once a quarter instead of once a month. And it's just a great way to have a closer look at some behind the scenes photos of some of the tutorials, some close-up looks at the stitches, things like that, and some extra little goodies there for you too. And that is all for today's tutorial. Stay tuned to next week when we're going to come back with another fun and fabulous crochet tutorial for you. And I hope you are continuing to really have fun and enjoy the craft of crocheting. All right, so I hope you have an amazing day. Happy crocheting. Take good care of yourselves as always. And I'll see you guys in next week's session. And remember, I upload every Wednesday morning. See you then.